Hey guys, at this point I have about 52 hours into Space Marines 2, and the first patch has actually hit as well. So I figure it's about time I give the game a review. You know, I could keep playing it for forever, and I'm sure the game is just going to get better and better as subsequent patches hit and more content is added. But this is going to be a review for the game as of the first patch. Which it is a good thing I waited for the first patch because they did actually fix a lot of things that I had problems with in the initial release of the game. So yeah, let me go ahead and give you the pros, the cons, and then my final verdict of the game. My first pro is that, I mean, we knew that this would be the case, you know, because it is the World War Z devs, but the game looks and it runs great. You know, back in World War Z, these devs showed that they have the capacity to have just a metric ass ton of enemies on screen, and the game will still look and run great. And this game is no exception. It looks significantly better than World War Z ever did. You know, I am playing on a pretty beefy PC, but I know a lot of people that have weaker PCs and the game's running fine for them. And then I think it also runs pretty decent on console as well. So, but on my rig, I have everything like maxed out, and I have a constant 120 FPS at 1440p. So yeah, the game runs and it looks absolutely fantastic. I also think that the gameplay here is largely iterative upon Space Marines 1. You know, I played through Space Marines 1 ahead of time to get ready for this game for my first time, and I really did actually like the game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It had a little bit of issues, but I think in large part this game fixes many of those issues that were present in the first game. You don't feel like you need to just be doing finishers 24/7 in order to get your health back. Now with the new, you know, contested system and armor system, as you're taking damage by enemies, you, as long as you're putting out damage, you're going to be recovering, you know, 95% of that damage that you're taking, unless you get hit with a particularly large attack, right? And then on top of that, there's several ways to restore something new that they've added, which is armor bars. And the armor bars is a really nice mechanic as well, because it does reward those finishers. It also rewards something new that they've added called, I call them quick shots. I think they're called gun kills or something like that. But essentially, after you do a heavy attack or you perfectly time a parry, which I'll talk about in a second, it'll enable you to do what's called a quick shot. You'll see it in the gameplay for sure here. Oh, actually right here, perfect timing. And this gives you some armor. It does a massive amount of damage to whatever enemy that you're shooting. It'll instantly kill the Minoris, the normal enemies. And so this is a great thing to just interweave into the combat flow with your parry, which is something new that they added as well. And I wasn't really too sure about the parry, you know, how that would fit in the game. And that's, you know, coming from a parry lover. Like, I love Sekiro and games akin to that, and I love games that go for more parry instead of dodge. And I have to say, though, it works very well. The parry timings are super gracious. You know, this is no Lies of P parry timings or something like that, where you have to just be perfect and know all of the attacks. You have plenty of time to react, and it will open enemies up for counterattacks. It'll open them up for those quick shots with your gun. And overall, I just think the combat flows really well. There's a very high skill ceiling in the PvE. The PvP, not so much. There's not really parrying in the PvP. And, you know, it's basically just spam melee and or spam shoot. You know, it plays more akin to like a Gears of War or something like that, instead of, you know, a lot of the parrying and the dynamic flow of the PvE, which I'll touch on a little bit in the cons. But overall, I think the gameplay is fantastic here, and I also love the story. This is a perfect example of how you do a natural continuation of a story from a game that, you know, came out years upon years ago. It has just enough that if you played the first game, you're going to know what's going on. You're going to be excited about it. You know, you're going to recognize characters. You're going to recognize, you know, name drops and stuff like that. And you're going to know what's going on in the story before probably people that are new to Space Marines 2 will know what's going on with the story. But overall, I don't think it's necessary to play the first game. So I think it's a perfect way that you go ahead and you do something like a continuation for a pretty old game. I think the story is fantastic here. It took me about 10 hours to complete. I played through it on hard mode, not the very hard. And I had a blast the entire time. I actually want to replay, even though there's no reason to replay the story. I want to replay the story and try and do it on very hard just because it is that good. I think the characters are fantastic. Every single character, I think his name's Gadriel or Galadriel, and Chiron, and obviously Titus. Even the captain, I'm spacing on his name. Oh, perfect. It's on screen. Sevastus Acheron. Badass name. It's great, man. And it really does just harken back to Gears of War for me. You know, I grew up playing Gears of War back on the 360, and there was just this level of camaraderie and brotherhood that was depicted in Gears of War that I have felt sorely lacking in modern day, you know, especially military shooters. Like, you play Call of Duty, and I don't really feel any of that brotherhood in those campaigns. And this game just does a fantastic job. Everybody, you know, everyone's not kissing your ass as Titus. Everyone's not like, oh, you're the best, you're the GOAT. They're kissing your ass. There's definitely a little bit of intrigue. There's a little bit of questioning, especially because so much of Titus's past is, you know, not public. But overall, you know, they overcome their differences. The mission is always the most important thing at hand, and I really, really enjoy the campaign. You know, it is like I said, it is 10 hours, so it's longer than I suspected, but it's not exactly, you know, super long if you're just getting the game for, you know, single player purposes. But it is very, very good. And I love the PvE mode. For me, this is the star of the show. This is why I would recommend you to get the game. If you are a fan of their previous title with World War Z, you'll feel right at home here. There's several classes with progression systems, perks that will, you know, affect your build. You're leveling up weapons. As you're using them, you're getting perks for weapons. This all is very resemblant of, you know, World War Z. And I love World War Z, man. That game caught quite a lot of flack when it came out, but I think that they did a great job in just providing content for years. I mean, they were patching that game for years, and I have no doubt Space Marines 2 is going to be the exact same way here. They have quite a lot of content at launch for the PvE, the operations mode. And I believe there's 5 classes. There could be 6. Each class, you know, has their own perks. They have their own armors to unlock. They have their own weapons to level up and unlock the perks and the mastery for those. And then kind of the downside, though, is that there is only 6 missions right now. Each mission is about 25 to 45 minutes, so they're not exactly short, but there isn't, you know, the most missions. And I'm happy that I made this after, you know, the patch 1, because previously every single person was only running mission 1 and 2 because that was dealing with the Tyrannid faction. There is another faction in the game that was probably 10 times harder to fight, especially on the highest difficulty modes. It was ridiculously difficult. So luckily, though, after the first patch, they have reworked how the armor system works. They have reworked, you know, a lot of the spawn rates and the difficulty of that second faction, and now it's a lot more in line with the Tyrannids. So people are actually playing the other 4 fucking missions in the game, which is really nice. So this is the star of the show for me. I think it's fantastic. The PvP is entirely okay. It's serviceable. Previously, I would have said it's not that good. It's still suffering from server issues. A lot of the times you'll get into a match and then it won't start, or you'll just be endlessly waiting for extra people to join into a lobby as people are, you know, leaving the lobby. That can be a little bit annoying for sure. And I do still think the progression is way too slow for the PvP. In order for me to unlock the, you know, the laser rifle, the gun you're seeing in this gameplay, in order for me to unlock that for sniper in PvP, I have to be like level 21 or 27. And let me put it in a perspective for you. We were about 2 or 3 weeks after the launch of the game, and YouTubers still said they were unable to make tier lists for the PvP guns because of the fact that they didn't have all of the weapons unlocked, and it was going to take several more weeks for them to unlock all of the weapons. So that kind of puts it into perspective for you just how much of a grind and how long it takes. That you have these turbo virgin YouTuber streamer people that are just playing, 20 hours a day grinding on the PvP, and they're still, after 3 weeks of doing that, unable to unlock several of the weapons. They've made it a little bit faster now, but it's still too slow for my liking. I think they need to fucking speed it up a bit. And I also just don't think that there's really too much there in terms of an end game in the PvP. You don't have the perk system and the mastery system that you have with the weapons in PvE and leveling up your class. So overall, you're doing all of it for drip, and you can get the drip as well in the PvE mode. So, when it comes to recommending this game, I think it's very important to ask somebody why they want the game. Do they want the game for the campaign? Do they want the game for the PvE? Or do they want the game for the PvP? If they do want the game for the PvP, if you're somebody out there that wants the game for the PvP, I would say this is not worth at the current moment in time, just because the PvP is definitely the most lackluster part of the game. It's not bad, but it's just merely serviceable. And I think the strong suit is definitely the PvE content and the campaign. Moving on to the rest of the pros, the sound design here is great. I love the music. It's fantastic. It's not quite as good as Darktide, another Warhammer type game that came out a little bit earlier. I think that came out about a year ago. But it's very, very good. The soundtrack is a whole lot of bangers. You're hearing it in the background of the review. There's a lot of bangers there. Not quite as good as Darktide, but still very solid. All of the voice acting is phenomenal here. A1, I wouldn't change a thing other than the fact that the fucking British say lieutenant instead of lieutenant. There's no F in lieutenant. Stop saying lieutenant. You guys created the fucking language. How are you still speaking it incorrectly? Sorry. Anyway, I fucking hate that, dude. I was so confused for so long when I was playing the game. I'm like, why do they keep saying lieutenant? Is this a Warhammer thing? Like, why is it still spelled lieutenant in the subtitles, but they're saying lieutenant? Is this like a different rank than a lieutenant? And no, just come to find out it's the Brits somehow mispronouncing their own language. So you gotta love it. But no, the voice acting is phenomenal here. The writing is great. All of the characters, none of the characters do anything that doesn't make sense. Like, everything that the characters do makes sense within their character. All of it is justified. All of it makes sense. And the writing is fantastic. The story of the campaign, keeps you on your toes. And the PvE does a great job as well of interweaving that story and all of the same voice acting and everything like that into the missions of PvE, which are kind of simultaneously going on while the campaign is going on. They're sort of intertwined with one another, which is a really cool way of doing things. Let me get into the cons, though. Now, there's not a lot of cons, but there are some. Server issues. There are still server issues plaguing the game as of right now, as of even after the first patch. This is mainly noted if you're trying to do, like, match with other people in quick match. Sometimes you'll get into a match and it just won't start. Sometimes you'll be in a lobby and it'll say, like, searching for people, and it's like, nobody will ever join your lobby. It'll just be you. Nobody will ever join, and you're basically forced to solo missions. And that brings me to the second negative. The bots are absolutely retarded in this game. They are incapable of doing most of the objectives in the game, which can make a lot of the PvE missions unbearably annoying. Like, very, very annoying. Especially when you're fighting the second faction that isn't the Tyranids. There's a lot of the missions where you have to stand in this AoE, in this circle. And if you leave the AoE at all, it will decrease your progress. So you want to stay in this circle AoE, right? Pretty simple stuff. Well, the problem is that the bosses, or the bots will be in the area and it won't be capturing it. So you yourself have to stay in the area the entire time. And this can be very problematic when there's a swarm of enemies or something aggroed on you and you're rolling around, you're dodging and stuff. Yeah, you're going to be kind of screwed. And the bots are going to do basically nothing. Also, for some reason, the bots cannot attack certain boss enemies. One in particular on mission 4, they cannot attack it. And as a result, like, mission 4 is practically impossible solo or with bots. So, you know, while you shouldn't exactly be playing solo with bots, it is inevitable people are going to leave or people are going to not join at times, especially with the server issues. And that makes like mission 4 just undoable, at least for some classes. Speaking of some classes, in this game, you do not pick your class and then it puts you into a game based upon that class that you've chosen. And this is a really big fucking problem, because if you're queuing for the highest difficulty, that shit is hard, man. It's pretty goddamn hard. And so you want to be, you know, above the level requirement. And the level requirement that they tell you to be is like 15. And you can definitely do these missions beforehand, but because your damage is directly tied to how much you have leveled up and mastered that weapon, if you're on a class that you haven't really played and it's using weapons that you haven't used, you're going to do no damage in those higher difficulties, since the enemies are going to be significantly tankier. So I've had several times where I've queued up for the highest difficulty. I want to play sniper. That's my max class, 25. And it'll put me into a game where people are already sniper. Oopsie. Now I have to pick a class where I'm level 1 in the hardest difficulty in the game. And that is not a good time. I've had people pissed off being like, dude, why the fuck are you queuing for the hardest difficulty? You're level 1. And I have to explain, listen, I had sniper picked. I went to do quick match for the hardest difficulty. It put me in here and you're already playing sniper. I haven't played any other class, you know. Now I have a couple classes that are at least leveled up, but, you know, I've no life this game significantly more than most people. So, you know, if you are somebody that's leveling up one class, you want to try and push those harder difficulties, you might just get screwed and it might put you into a game where someone's already playing that class. And if you're playing one of the more popular classes, like, luckily not a lot of people play sniper, so I don't have that issue too much. But if you're playing bulwark, which is a very, very common class, you're going to have some issues, man. And same if you're playing heavy. A lot of people playing heavy. And this is all just caused by the fact that it's not putting you into a queue based on your class. And it's compounded by the fact, obviously, that you can't have multiple of one class in a match. So that is definitely I would say, an objective negative for the game. I don't think you can really argue against that. Same with the server issues. I think that's a pretty objective negative as well. And then my final negative, and this is something that is going to obviously be remedied as time comes out, but I wish there was a little bit more customization. And I do wish there were a little bit more PvE and PvP content. So for PvP, I wish there were more maps. There's only a few maps. There's not a lot of maps at all. That's a big L, in my opinion. It can lead the already kind of meh PvP to feel even more meh when you're just playing on the same maps over and over and over, grinding to try and unlock just one more gun. And the PvE, it's better now that they've nerfed the second faction. You know, now you can actually play 6 missions, but I do wish that there was like 8 missions. That would have been a little bit better. Also, customization. Each class only has like their one tier, like one line of progression. And I would have loved to see a little bit more either cross-class progression items. They have a couple like the Death Watch set and stuff that you can put on any of the classes, but I would have liked to see just a little bit more in terms of the customization here, because I'm not a fan of how some of the classes look. Some of the classes look a little bit silly, especially when you go into the higher tiers and stuff. And I would have liked to just be able to do, even if it's not Warhammer accurate, I would have liked the freedom to put emblems wherever I want. Like if I unlock an emblem, I get it. Space Wolves, you know, they're supposed to have the Space Wolf icon on the right pauldron or whatever, right? Or the right shoulder. Who cares, bro? Let me put that shit on my knee pad if I want to, right? Let me put it on my other shoulder if I want to. You know, just stuff like that to just kind of allow a little bit more customization, a little bit more freedom would have been nice. I'd like to see that. But like I said, this stuff is largely going to get remedied. They're going to add more maps. They're going to add more weapons. They're going to add more customization options down the line. Overall, my thoughts on Warhammer Space Marines 2. I think this is easily a contender for Game of the Year. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking. This game isn't like completely redefining how narratives are told in game, and the gameplay isn't doing anything particularly revolutionary. However, what it does do, it does fantastically. And I think it just kind of harkens back to the old days where you would get a game and it would be like, yeah, this game has a really solid campaign. It has a solid, you know, horde mode or co-op experience, and then it has a pretty serviceable PvP experience, right? We used to get games like this all the time in the 360, and we don't really get them anymore. So I am a really big fan of just, not every game needs to be, you know, some Last of Us 2, like really trying to push the boundaries of what a narrative is and graphical fidelity and yada yada. This game is pure, simple, fun, and it does its job fantastically. I would give this game a solid 9 out of 10. I don't think that this is a perfect game. I don't think it's 10 out of 10 yet, but I do think in time, as they add more and more content, much like they've done with World War Z in the past, that this game could approach a 10 out of 10, assuming, you know, that they treat the game with the love and care that it obviously deserves with this big brand. For me, you know, 5 is average, 6 is above average, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, and 10 is a practically perfect masterpiece. I think this game is amazing, dude. I really do. I'm not sure if this is my game of the year right now. There's been a couple other games I did really love, like Persona 3 Reload and Stellar Blade, but this is most definitely in talks for game of the year. It just, like I said, it's not groundbreaking. It's not doing anything insane, but it's so fun. I feel no like attachment to it. It doesn't have this annoying it doesn't have all this annoying stuff that like live service games typically have now, where you got to do your dailies and you got to do your weeklies and yada yada yada, right? It's just good, honest fun, and I can jump in and out with the boys and play whenever I want and just have a great time. And I think that is sorely missing in today's market for games. And it really does take me back to the old Gears of War days, man. And boy, oh boy, were those some better days. But yeah, that'll do it for me. Let me know what you guys think of Space Marines 2. Do you think it deserves the 60 out of 100 the PC Gamer gave it? Do you think it's 10 out of 10 game of the year? Or do you think Wukong, you know, is going to end up beating its ass? Let me know. I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Dislike the video if you didn't like it, and maybe subscribe to see some future reviews. But have a good one. See you guys. Bye bye.